Okay, let's look at converting units. So we're going to be looking at some measurement, and often when we get a measurement question, we might find that either the units are presented in one format, okay, but the answer asks you to present them in a different format. So for example, you might be given the dimensions in, say, kilometres, and then the question asks you to answer in centimetres. Okay, and so you've got to do a conversion from one to the other. In order to do this, you just need to think through that particular process. So for example, here we go from kilometres to metres, okay? And for example, if we had 1 kilometre, it's going to become 1,000 metres. So it's times 1,000 to go from kilometres to metres. If we were going to go then from metres to centimetres, we would times that again by 100. Okay, so this would become then times 100 and become 100,000. Okay, and then times 10 to get to millimetres. So we can use this process in order to create one-step processes. So for example, if we went from kilometres to centimetres, it's going to be 1,000 times 100, so it's going to be times 100,000 in order to do that, okay? Equally though, we could be asked to do the reverse of that, okay? So for example, you might be given a question in centimetres and you're asked to present the answer as kilometres, okay? And in order to do this, we would go back from millimetres and we would divide by 10 for millimetres to centimetres, divide by 100 to go from centimetres to metres, and divide by 1,000 to go from metres back to kilometres, following that same process. Now these are obviously all lengths, okay, but the same applies if you are doing area. So if we make all of these into area, so squared, okay, so kilometre squared, metre squared, centimetre squared, and metre squared, these all become the same too. So that becomes 1,000 squared, that becomes 100 squared, that becomes 10 squared, and the same for converting back the other way, okay? The only one that's not on here is you can go from kilometres squared to hectares, okay? And in order to do that, it's times 10 squared, and obviously back 10 by 10 squared. And then from hectares to metres squared, okay, which is times 100 squared, and then back the other way, okay. And of course, hectares are the measure that most farms are measured in, okay. So you find that things like large areas land like, say, the size of a country, area of a country, area of a state, or the area of an incredibly large farm would be in kilometres squared. Most farms are actually measured in hectares, and then things like blocks of land or things of that nature that are smaller, typically smaller than a hectare or smaller than maybe 2 hectares, they'll measure in metres squared. Okay, so we're given 3.5 metres squared, and we are asked to convert it to millimetres squared. So this becomes 3.5 times by, and we're going from metres squared to millimetres squared, so it's 100 squared times 10 squared. So that's going to give us 10 times 100 is 1,000 squared. So 3.5 times 1,000 squared. So that's going to give us now 1,000 squared is 1,000 times 1,000, so that's 1,000,000. So 3.5 times 1,000,000, that's going to give us 3.5 million. And always remember, when you're writing down your numbers, you should be grouping them in lots of 3, okay, to show the place value. Okay, let's have a look at another one. Okay, so here we're given 27,000 metres squared, and we want to convert it to hectares. So we're going to go 27,000 divided by 100 squared Okay, so it's 27,000 divided by 10,000. Okay, and that's going to give us 2.7 hectares. Okay.